Welcome back to another edition of the Salt Lake City Gulls here on OOTP 27. And as you can see, we already need to replace our scouting director. Literally one season with the organization, and he said, I'm done. What the fuck, man? And then we also need to replace our third base coach. This player retiring was just Yamamoto, who never pitched for us ever because he got hurt immediately in spring training. But, yeah. Already having to replace our scouting director, not exactly how we wanted to go into our first full offseason here with the Gulls. I mean, that is definitely a big setback. This is a tough one for me. It's coming down to two for me. It's either going to be Cody Sundbeck, who you can see is very experienced. He is 59 years old, so it is very possible that we could just hire this guy, and he could just retire again next season, or he retires in 2-3 years, which I still don't really love as an idea, but he's legendary in everything. He is a highly favors tool, which is what I preferred for the majority of my time with OOTP. With the past couple iterations of this game, I've kind of preferred some of the other stuff. And then there is a neutral guy here who has outstanding in everything except for legendary with his international scouting, and he's only 49. So that is intriguing to me. He does have 17 years experience. He is 49. There's also another guy who has everything outstanding, but then he has amateurs on legendary, but he is favorability. And he only has 8 years of experience. And he's, favorability. So, but he's 42, so he's probably the one who would be around for the longest. The Rabago guy probably would be around a decent amount of time. It's so tempting to just see all this legendary and be like, yeah, give me this guy. But at the same time, I think I might lean somebody like this just to have somebody we can rely on for like 10 years or something, or even just 5-6 years. I mean, you can see here if I sort by international, they're the only guys who have blue in everything, are these three guys right here, and they're the ones that we're looking at. You know, I think we're going to go with the ability guy, just because we want to get a guy in here who's going to be our dude for multiple seasons. So we're going to go with Nick Cherubi here, who apparently is a real guy. All right. Played minor league ball in 17 and 18. This was back when low A was a thing, before they completely neutered the minor leagues, which they're trying to do again, by the way. They're trying to do again with the new CBA. They want to outsource that shit to college and have like one minor league level. Alrighty, so before we advance any days here, and before our scout is actually hired, we're going to not really dive into any like overalls or anything right now, aside from ones that we like know are actually what these dudes are. But you know, we don't have a scout right now, so all this is just OSA. We're guessing a lot of these things right now, but just as a general rough guide for what we are heading into with this offseason, I'm thinking that basically the only two starters we think are going to be guaranteed spots are Hector Gomez, who put up a 2.5-win season. You could round up the 3-win season, and he just looks like one of our better pitchers. And then Joel Kiraz, who is the big-time control guy who got hurt towards the end of the season. And I just like these types of pitchers. And he's a bit better on the stuff and movement than Ryan Murphy is, who I am leaning. Ryan Murphy, this big group of emergency starting pitching right here, these are all guys that could potentially be in our rotation that are in system right now. Some of these guys could be in the bullpen, some of these guys could be in the minor leagues, some of these guys could be in the rotation, depending on who comes in our organization this offseason, who leaves, it's all very fluid at this point of an expansion franchise. So this could totally flip on its head and look nothing like last year's team by the time we get to opening day 2038. But right now, these are all guys that we're looking at with possible starting potential here at the big league level. Ryan Murphy, I am kind of leaning towards starting simply because he's one of these big-time control guys, and I just think that these guys are valuable, and if he just has a little bit better luck, maybe he gets the walk percentage up a bit more, has a bit better luck with some of the BABIP and whatnot, maybe he ends up being a bit more serviceable. So, we'll have to see, but right now, he's in this big group of emergency starting pitching with guys like Montoya, who is a prospect, CJ Franco, who's a big prospect. Vinny Diaz is somebody he might end up in the rotation just because he's a guy where it's just like, okay, sink or swim at this point. Like, you're either going to be a starter or you're going to not be a big league pitcher at all, really. So Vinny Diaz might be a guy we just kind of throw in the rotation to be like sink or swim this season and see what he does. I'm kind of leaning towards that being one of the options. There's also Leo Yara, who is an option. Jamie Scudder, once again, an option. Logan McCutcheon, once again, an option. Who else did I skipped over Tim Wolfley, who was another prospect. He got hurt in June. So he could be an option for us. He's another big-time control pitcher. So all these guys could potentially fight for spots in the rotation for us. Like I said, very fluid at this point in an expansion franchise. But I am leaning towards having Vinny Diaz as like, we'll just throw him in right here, right now, because I'm leaning towards having him as a guy who just be like, okay, it's time. It's time to put up or shut up at this point, and see what he can do. And we're going to probably throw him in the rotation and just do that. And then as far as the bullpen goes, this middle relief category are all guys who I think are guaranteed spots in the bullpen. Travis Williams, who had a good season for us. We picked him up from the Nationals in the expansion draft. Porter Hodge as the local Salt Lake City man, who is our closer. We have Kevin Yoder, who has another year of team control at decently cheap at $2.8 million. Probably not going to be in as high a leverage role this year as a stopper, but we'll probably put him in more of a middle relief, long relief sort of situation. Maybe like a mop-up sort of thing. Well, we'll see. Lorene, he's going to be in our bullpen, the Brazilian-Japanese man, and then also Drew Titsworth, of course, as another right-hander. So these are all right-handers. We're going to have to figure out who the lefties are in the bullpen. Xavier Black could end up being one of those guys, as he had a decent 14 2/3 innings for us and 11 innings for the Mariners. So I don't really know how he ends up pitching so well, but he did, so he might get a chance in the bullpen again for us. It depends on, once again, what we bring into the organization here throughout the offseason. Once again, I'm going to say it a billion times, it's a very fluid situation here with an expansion team. But Xavier Black is one of the maybes right now, and then Mitch Berrien is also a maybe for ending up on our big league staff. He is a guy who is also arbitration eligible, and he has no option years, so he's a bit more of a guy where we'd be like, maybe we'll trade him if we can. Probably just be a guy we end up not throwing an arbitration number to and just letting walk into free agency if we were to do something like that. Or he just ends up as a guy who we end up waiving and DFAing, and he ends up in AAA for us. You know, that's probably what his future is, but he's a maybe right now. And then there's all these guys, like I mentioned, and then these non-specified guys are both pending free agents. So Robinson Ortiz, pending free agent here into the offseason. We could potentially bring him back. We'll think about it for sure. And then Jason DeCaro, who probably is not going to get brought. But yeah, we're not going to be giving Jason DeCaro $21 million. So he is definitely somebody who's going to be walking into free agency for us. And then honestly, if he's wanting a contract like this, yeah, never mind. QO is 26.8. He would probably just straight up accept that. So we're not going to be QOing anybody. We're just going to be letting DeCaro and Ortiz both walk into free agency. And then as far as the offense goes, this is the rough idea of what it could look like here heading into 2038. Poto Fittipaldi will probably end up being our catcher, once again, depending on what happens here in free agency and whatnot, trades, all sorts of ways to acquire players. I'm probably also going to be diving in, looking at some indie ball teams, trying to get some talent over there as well. Harley McGee proved that he should be our first baseman, so he's going to be our first baseman. At least that is the plan right now. He's an Iron Man. We're going to let him play first base. Second base is going to be a platoon, once again, of Ibert Sanchez and Billy Underwood. I think those guys prove that they should be in that platoon, so they're going to be doing their thing. And then we're going to have Birdie at third base, who we acquired from the Mariners at the deadline. We have Carrizales, who's going to be slotted in to play shortstop. We're going to make sure that we have a good backup for him, so if he gets hurt, we have an actual guy who can play shortstop. And then left field is going to be a platoon of Nick Casson and somebody. That's something we're definitely going to be looking to acquire here, is some platoons. So Nick Casson will be left field or right field, depending on which one he ends up playing. But he'll be a corner outfield spot as somebody who only plays as a lefty bat against right-handed pitching, and we want to bring in a guy who can play against left-handed pitching to platoon with him. Right field could end up being a platoon with Mendoza against right-handed pitching and then somebody else against left-handed pitching. But right now, it's, like I said, very fluid. He may end up being the fourth outfielder. He may end up not even being on the team and trade bait. We'll have to see. But right now, it could end up being where he's a platoon. And both corner outfield spots are platoons. And then even Tyler Brewington is a potential name to be a platoon guy. He could be the platoon. He could be either left or right field for us. Probably left with only 50 arm. So he might be the left fielder against right-handed pitching. Once again, we will see how it shakes out here in the offseason. And then center field, obviously, is going to be Marcos de la Cruz because he has proven that he is a legit major league player. So he's our dude. He's the face of the franchise right now, Marcos de la Cruz. So he's going to be in center field, obviously. And then DH, up in the air, could end up being Steve Woods and in some sort of platoon as a lefty bat. It could end up being John Gallardo in the DH spot. It could end up being Scarborough Green in the DH spot. Like I said, very fluid. We will have to see how things shake out. I'm kind of leaning towards Scarborough Green just because I want to see this guy develop and be a big piece for us with this type of speed profile and stealing ability. But we'll see how things shake out. And lots of things wide open for possible adding to our roster here. And then this is before we do any changes, but we are slated to have $104 million available here heading into the offseason. So definitely some big-time flexibility for us heading into the offseason here with potential, a lot of adding potential here for our offseason. And this is even with our player dev cranked up to $50 million, our draft budget's $20 our international amateurs is what it needs to be, our scouting is $25 million. I may crank this to like 30, but 25 is plenty fine. Sometimes I even go lower than 25, but this is all, even with those numbers cranked up to what they are, we still have over $100 million available here this offseason, even with a team that has the 24th budget. I think they actually went up because we do have a bit higher of a budget this season. It went from $260 million to $282 million here this offseason. So, bit more of a budget to deal with here. Alrighty, so we have gone ahead and added in our first round of development lab here. Jerry Mendoza, trying to work on his plate discipline here. Once again, we don't know if these are 100% ratings, 100% accurate, but I do have it on Head Scout, so I think it should be showing what is the most recent scouting report from our previous scout. So Jerry Mendoza has some eye. We're going to try to tap into that eye here for him. Honestly, now that I'm looking at this, he's not the fastest guy, so we're actually going to try to tap into power with Mendoza. Put him on this list, but for power, Jerry Mendoza, generate bat speed. So yeah, Mendoza trying to tap into his power instead of his eye, because he doesn't really have the speed to really take advantage of the eye. But then some of the other guys, Brewington, we are trying to tap into some eye potential for him, get him on base, be able to use his speed a bit more. And then same with Birdie, trying to tap into his eye, use his speed a bit more. Pretty self-explanatory. Carrizales trying to get this BABIP potential up and possibly make him a bit more viable of a hitter for us rather than just a glove-first guy at shortstop for us at this season. And then we have Scarborough Green trying to tap into his eye because he has some potential there, and he has this really good stolen base threat to his game, and we want to be able to use that as much as possible with him, get him on base, and then just unleash havoc on the base paths with his speed. Then we have a bunch of pitchers who we are mainly trying to improve control. Julio Montoya trying to tap into this control potential that he has. We have Leo Yara trying to improve this control and maybe possibly also get the potential up for him. We have Hector Gomez trying to tap into his control potential, even though it is probably fake at this point, but I figured why not try to take a shot in the dark and see if we can get it up and maybe improve him a bit more. And then we have Vinny Diaz trying to improve his control because right now it's not good whatsoever. CJ Franco, same sort of deal with him, trying to improve his control. And then Roberto Carlos is a prospect we have down in AA, the lefty pitcher who has movement and control, good potentials. We're trying to tap into this control and just make it to where he's at least a 50, because if we want any of this to go up, we want the control to go up. So we want the control to fill in here before anything else if we can choose. So we're going to try to tap into that. And then Danny Chavez as a pitcher who we just took in the second round out of Auburn. We're trying to possibly bump up this control potential or even just fill in the control here. Because if we could get him to be a bit better control guy with this type of movement, he's looking much more viable than he is right now. Alrighty, folks, we've reached the point in the offseason where the awards have been given out here for the 2037 campaign. And as you can see, the American League, or the National League MVP rather, is Diego Amenagal of the St. Louis Cardinals, beats out Lance Smithcull in a tight, very, very tight race by 1 point, 368 to 367 for Smithcull. Waymeyer had a decent amount of points as well, so did Antonio Ortiz. I mean, really stacked National League. But then over on the American League side of things, you guessed it right. This Harris is indeed Jerry goddamn Harris wins the MVP award in the American League. His first year with the Boston Red Sox finally puts it all together as a hitter and a pitcher. 4.7 WAR as a hitter, 158 WRC plus, 28 home runs, 981 OPS, and then through 25 starts, puts together a 3-win season with a 3.15 ERA, a 3.61 FIP, and then just all around really, really good season for Jerry Harris here at 31. Finally puts it all together and wins an MVP. But then we move things on to the Cy Young Awards. The National League winner was Austin Prouty of the Arizona Diamondbacks, with the two Giants pitchers behind him. On the American League side of things, it was Sean Webster of the Chicago White Sox. Cam Schlittler, former Nationals pitcher, for a season on this list. Still, makes no sense that he's a good pitcher, but he continues to pitch well here at 36 years old. And then on the Rookie of the Year side of things, in the National League, Omar Gonzalez of the Cubs. On the American League, it is Marcos de la Cruz, baby. American League Rookie of the Year finally gets a chance at age 27 and makes it count with a 3.9 win season. I mean, just fantastic stuff. First star in Salt Lake City Gulls history is Marcos de la Cruz. And then you may also see on this page that he has a second little award there on the top of his page, and that it was indeed a Silver Slugger Award. I keep forgetting we're in the American League now. Marcos de la Cruz, Salt Lake City Gulls, at center field. The best center fielder in the American League this season, going by Silver Slugger, going by hitting, I guess, Marcos de la Cruz, and then, as we know, he's a good defender as well. I mean, just fantastic stuff. What a guy to build around here. And then the only other thing really worth mentioning is that Bobby Matamoros finally gets himself a Reliever of the Year award. I mean, a 2.32 ERA plus, a 48 FIP minus. Somehow this year where he had 1,000 ERA plus did not get Reliever of the Year. He finished a full season with a .38 ERA and did not get Reliever of the Year, but then does get it here in 2037 in 63 and a third innings pitched with the Washington Nationals. The Nationals had a down year, but Bobby Matamoros did not. Alrighty, folks, we have reached the end of the offseason, and it's time for opening day 2038, but obviously, before we get into the season, it is time to go over everything that happened in the offseason, and we are actually going to start things off with our IFA list. Signed a decent amount of players once again. We'll start things off just sorting by potential. Some of these guys have low scouting accuracy, but we're obviously getting scouts on them. First things first, Miguel Campos, 17-year-old Dominican shortstop, picked him up for $2.2 million. The best player potential-wise, with a obviously low scouting overall, but seems decent range, could be a good bat. We'll see if he develops. Then we have Jorge Molina, who is a left-handed reliever, big-time stuff, slider, cutter, everything moves for him, out of Mexico. 16 years old, picked him up for $310,000. Then we move things on to Roberto Trujillo, another left-handed reliever. Looks like he could be really good if he develops. Really good hold runners, control, movement stuff, just the whole package as a reliever, even 35 stamina to be a stopper type if all this develops, obviously, out of Cuba for $1.7 million. And then we also picked up a couple Brazilians, the first one of them being Octavio Trujillo, a right-handed thrower, right-handed bat, from Brazil, like I said, 17 years old, 60 range, really good bat-to-ball skills, high leader. Picked him up for $550,000. The other Brazilian we picked up was Adriano Reguier, something like that. Switch hitting, third baseman, probably, is what he's going to end up being. Really good gap power, decent eye, some decent base running. Picked him up. He's 16 years old for $230,000. And then we also had Maxime Martin, a Haitian outfielder with really good BABIP, gap power, and eye, and really, really good speed as well. 55 range, 16 years old out of Haiti for $1.5 million. And then we picked up a Japanese pitcher, Godai Gushikin, a left-hander with really good stamina, hold runners, really elite control potential, and 16 years old out of Japan, like I said, for $320,000. And then the final player on the list, Silvino Piano, a Venezuelan outfielder with elite speed, bunting, and gap power. 16 years old, almost 17, for $260,000. And as for the rest of the offseason here for the Salt Lake City Gulls, we started things off. The very first thing we did was we signed a new third base coach, 3-year deal for Trey Holmes. Excellent at infield, outfield, and running. He is now a member of our coaching staff. We also had to hire a new scout because our scout retired after one season. Nick Cherubi is our scout. He is a favorability scout with legendary amateurs and outstanding for the other 3 categories. He is 43 years old, so he should be around for quite a bit here. I didn't want to have to deal with somebody retiring after a couple seasons, so we went with the young guy, 43 years old. He'll be our scout for the foreseeable future. And now moving on to the December portion of the offseason, where there was quite a few free agent signings and a trade. A lot of movement this offseason. Maybe not a lot of movement, but definitely a different looking team here in 2038 than we had in our first year of existence. But the first signing we did, Matt Oliver, a left-handed pitcher on a 1-year deal for $1.5 million, really cheap. I thought he was interesting enough to give a contract to. He is currently on waivers because he has no options and did not make the cut for our Major League starting 26 players. So I think he should be able to pass through. We'll see. He was actually a 45 when I signed him. I didn't even realize he was a 50 now, but you know, he should be able to pass through. Even if he does, whatever. We have some lefties that we can work with. And we move things on to a big trade we did, Manny De Los Santos. This was actually offered to us as one of those email trades, and when I just tried to do Manny De Los Santos for the guys straight up, they wouldn't do it, and the other guys are just completely useless, so I figured why not just do the trade here. So Manny De Los Santos was not going to be on our team anyways, so because he has no options, as you can see, so I just figured why not get something for him since they're offering, and we ended up getting Victor Matos, who is somebody that I believe I signed as an IFA. Yes, I did indeed sign him as an IFA in 2028 for $500,000. Victor Matos, now 26 years old, as a really good base running, bat-to-ball skill, can play all 4 infield positions at a decently high level. Switch hitter, having some really, really good seasons throughout the minor leagues. He is going to be in AAA for us as depth, but he does still have all 3 option years left, so he is very interesting. He is on our 40-man roster, though, so we will see how he fares. He may end up on our big league roster at some point. We shall see. And then the other 2 players in the deal, we had to give them, who was it? We had to give them this guy who gives a shit, and then they gave us this guy, who gives a shit, whatever. And then in the Rule 5 draft, we made 1 selection this season. It was Landon Harper from the Colorado Rockies. He is a right-handed pitcher with 70 control, 50 movement, and 40 stuff. He is going to be in our rotation this season with his mutton chops and soul patch. 36, almost 37 years old. He's bounced around a few teams here. You can see Atlanta to the Cubs, to the Orioles, to the Tigers, back to the Orioles, back to the Tigers, and then this past season, or I guess the past season, he was with Detroit and with Colorado. Did pretty well with Colorado in their bullpen, and I just figured, his ratings here, he's got the 35 stamina, had some decent percentile rankings. We're going to give him a chance in the rotation here for us here in 2038. And then taking a look at the rest of the free agent signings that we made, we picked up another lefty to add to the bullpen here on a one-year deal for $3.5 million. John Taylor, he's a one-inning guy, but he's got that elite hold runners, really good stuff, decent control, good three-pitch mix here. He spent time with Baltimore, Philadelphia, Toronto, bounced around a few different teams, but really good reliever option for us here. And a lot of these guys that we picked up on one-year deals, it's like, hey, if we're going to be scrappy, maybe we might be able to make a run to the wild card, but if not, we've got some guys on one-year deals that we might be able to pick up something valuable and more team controllable at the deadline if that ends up how things shake out, I should say. But then move things on to another reliever, Charlie Bailenson, a right-hander. Bit of a veteran player, 38 years old, for $3 million. Really good control, 55 movement with the 60 control paired. He's a single-inning guy, but figured he was worth picking up here on a deal. So he's going to be in our bullpen here for 2038. Then we also went and signed another bullpen arm. This is a left-hander, Jerry Laws. On paper, doesn't look great. He spent a couple seasons in indie ball, with, I believe that's Staten Island Ferry Hawks and the York Revolution in back-to-back seasons. Actually won the Best Reliever Award in the Atlantic League in 2037. You can see here, really good numbers, really good percentile rankings. And if you look at his ratings, really, really good against left-handed pitching as a left-hander. Not a slouch against righties either, but we are actually going to be playing him as a specialist with a secondary middle relief role, as we will get into as we move things on. So, on paper, 40 overall doesn't really, jump off the page at you, but interesting player who we gave a deal to. And we gave him a 2-year deal too. It was 1.65, and then the second year is a team option. So if he ends up being a good player for us, we'll bring him back on 1.65 absolutely, because he has a bunch of service time as well. So he could be an interesting player for us here as a lefty reliever. And then move things on to bringing in a new starter, Jacob Steinmetz, who I've now acquired like 4 or 5 different times going back into the Nationals series, out of the fuck-ass Elevate Academy. One of those, I think they serve like, if you look them up, they're like, oh, we offer training for like 6-year-olds and shit like that, just real bleak stuff, but that's where he came from. 34 years old now, almost 35. And as we know, he has bounced around a shit ton of different teams, starting off with us. And this is all just MLB, too, because before he was with us, he was in the minors for a while in AAA with Arizona, got him in the Rule 5, spent 2 seasons with us, then we traded him to Pittsburgh. He was decent there. Then we got him back in Washington. Then he went back to Arizona. I think we went back to Arizona, and then we traded for him. I forget exactly what this 2035 one was, but then to Tampa Bay, then he was in the minors, and then he went to Nashville last season, and then to St. Louis, and now he is with the other expansion team, the Salt Lake City Gulls, as a guy to, once again, if we end up being scrappy making the wild card, it's probably because a guy like Jacob Steinmetz had a really good season. If we end up not pushing for a wild card, Jacob Steinmetz could be a guy we trade at the deadline. And then we ended up bringing in 2 catchers, as Poto Fittipaldi is actually now our 3rd catcher. He's in AAA. We have a duo catcher of Ethan Salas, 31 years old now, all these gold gloves to his name, $4.2 million for 1 season. He's got the 65 block, 70 frame, 65 arm. Obviously no bat whatsoever when it comes to him, but we just went all in on defense with catcher this season. High leader, he's a captain, so he's going to be on our team. As well as move things on, and we take a look at Patrick Bailey. We have both of them, folks. Salas and Patrick Bailey on our team, both on 1-year deals. We had to give Patrick Bailey a little bit more money at 10.5, but we had a bunch of money to spend. and we figured why not give some one-year deals out. So Patrick Bailey and Ethan Salas are going to be the catching tandem here in Salt Lake City this season. The 80 framing from Patrick Bailey. I mean, look at these framing numbers. Double digits like every season. He's the starter. Salas is the backup. We shall see how things shake out, but I'm excited to see what our pitching staff looks like with these guys behind the plate, catching them as their battery mates. And then we also ended up, we claimed a few guys. We claimed Jeremy Kemper, or I should talk about this Logan McCutchen trade first. Logan McCutchen, we traded him along with Dusty Dixon as just a way to make the trade work to the Baltimore Orioles in return for Brandon Poore. Brandon Poore, remember he was with those Cincinnati Reds teams doing really well back in the early 2030s, and I think maybe early 2030s, was a really good player for them, ended up falling off, going to Baltimore, and then kind of righting the ship the past couple seasons. But they were interested in trading him. So what happened was I was looking for ways to move guys off the 40-man because we just brought in so many players this season that I was like, it was a real crunch to get guys off our 40-man. And I had to end up DFAing guys, trading guys that I didn't really want to move on from, but, you know, it was just a matter of we had a checklist. Some guys were going to play, some guys weren't, and I figured we might as well, you know how it is. It's a roster crunch. But anyways, Brandon Poore, we got him because I tried to trade away Jerry Mendoza, and I did not end up trading away Jerry Mendoza, but when I did offer Jerry Mendoza, Brandon Poore came up as one of the trade suggestions. So I was like, let's see what we can get Brandon Poore for. And it ended up being not very much. So we end up having 25% retained by the Orioles. So we're only paying a little, not a little bit, the majority of it, but, you know, not as much. So we have him for 2 seasons, this year and next year at age 30 and 31. And he is going to be our third baseman. As you'll see, Birdie's actually going to play some outfield for us this year, who we picked up from Seattle at last year's trade deadline. But Brandon Poore is now a Salt Lake City Gull, the perfect player for this offense we are trying to build here with these ratings and these speed and bunt ratings. So I'm very excited to see what Brandon Poore can do on our system here. And then we also claimed Jeremy Kempers off of waivers from San Francisco. He was the guy that we had with the Nationals for quite a while. I think I signed him. Yes, $370,000 as a IFA out of Curacao in 2028. And then he was with San Francisco for some reason. I don't really know how he ended up there. I guess I could just go general here. I guess they just let him walk, and then San Francisco signed him to a minor league deal and ended up re-signing, and then we claimed it off waivers. So now he is a part of our organization. Right now, he is currently on IL because he got hurt in spring training, but the plan is for him to end up being the 4th outfielder once he comes back from injury. Right now, it is Mendoza, but the plan is for him to take that spot once he comes back. So we'll see how things shake out. And then we did also add another outfielder to the mix this season, Max Clark. We actually gave him a decent contract here. So basically, De La Cruz is going to be shifting to right field this season, and Max Clark, who is one of the better center fielders in baseball in this universe, is going to be our center fielder. Obviously, the bat isn't too great, but it's still decent. He's going to put up a decent WRC+. plus. I would expect like a 90, 80 WRC+, plus, something around there, and I'm fine with that. He does that, and he plays this elite defense, adds this speed profile to our team, and he ends up helping out our defense. I mean, that would be fantastic. So Max Clark, we gave him a 4-year deal. It is 3 years guaranteed, $20 million for the first season, then 18, then it drops down to 17.5 for his age 35 season. And then if by some miracle he is still an elite center fielder after 3 seasons, then we could opt in for a 17.5 for a 4th season. But I doubt that's going to happen. But we have him for at least 3 years. Max Clark is our center fielder. I'm excited to see what our defense looks like with their catching tandem that we have. Carrizales at shortstop, and then Max Clark patrolling center field for us. And then just very quickly, before we go over what the actual roster looks like, let's just go over the programs here, because we didn't really have too many successful ones, but Pablo Carrizales did improve his BABIP by 5. Don't really know if it shows up here, but he had a successful program. Leo Yara had a successful control program, just under 5. Not really anything really of note there. And then for the second round of Dev Labs, we had Mendoza with an outstanding base running improvement, Marcos de la Cruz with an outstanding stealing improvement, a successful training program for Ibert Sanchez for his stealing as well. And then we had John Gallardo, who figured out the infield a little bit more, as he is actually going to end up playing some DH for us. He is the DH for us right now. Finally rewarding him after a really, really good AAA season in 2037, and then in 2036 with Pensacola in the Marlins system, he had a really good year down there as well. And now finally at 29, going to get some run here in the big leagues and see if he can continue with those percentile rankings here in the big leagues. And then in case you're wondering, there are a couple pours here, but they were no noticeable changes here for Brewington's outfield defense and for Jeremy Kemper's outfield defense as well. So now taking a look at what our actual opening day roster looks like on the pitching side of things, it's going to be Jacob Steinmetz, followed by Hector Gomez, returning from last season, along with Joel Quiroz. In the rotation, Landon Harper, the Rule 5 draft selection, is the 4th starter, and then the 5th starter is Vinny Diaz. We are giving him some run as that 5th starter. We want to see if he can finally start to fill in these potential ratings and potentially turn into a really good starter for us. We're going to see, this is a make-or-break season for Vinny Diaz. If it breaks, he's probably out of the organization, or maybe he's a reliever. We'll have to see. But it's sink or swim time for Vinny Diaz here. And then in the bullpen, Porter Hodge, the Salt Lake City man, is going to be our closer. We have a double-barrel setup situation of Lorene, the Japanese-Brazilian guy we picked up from the Dodgers last year, and then John Taylor as the lefty in the double-barrel setup role. We don't have stoppers this year, just setup men. And then we have 4 middle relief guys with some secondary setup roles, and then Kevin Yoder with a long relief. It's Travis Williams, Kevin Yoder, Charlie Balinson, and Drew Titsworth returning from last season. I might possibly him use more often. We'll do that because he was so good for us last season. We'll throw him on use more often. And then Jerry Laws is that specialist with the secondary middle relief role because he is very, very good against lefties, and we want to use him in that role as much as possible. Now, obviously, it's not as much of like a loogie as it used to be back in the day where you could just bring a guy in against just a lefty and then take him out. But, whenever there's like multiple lefties in the order coming up, Jerry Laws is going to be the guy who gets put in the game. And then on the hitting side of things, the lineup against right-handed pitching is going to be Ibert Sanchez at second base, Brandon Poore at third, Marcos de la Cruz in right field, John Gallardo DHing, Harley McGee at first base, Birdie in left field, Patrick Bailey catching, Carazales at short, and then Max Clark rounding things out in center field. We have a good mix of lefty-righty, lefty-lefty, righty-righty, lefty with a switch hitter, righty-lefty. We don't want to have a ton of guys just in a row, so it's a good mix there. And then on the backups, Ethan Salas is the backup catcher. We have Scarborough Green as the backup first baseman / DH. Billy Underwood acts as the backup infielder against righties, and then Jerry Mendoza is the 4th outfielder right now. And then against lefties, Billy Underwood shifts into second base. We swap Poore and Underwood here for 1-2. The rest of the lineup remains the same. And, Mendoza is somebody who does have no option years, so if he is playing well as our 4th outfielder when Kempers comes back, we may just roll with him because Kempers does have options. But Kempers, on paper, might be a bit better of an option for us, so we'll see how things work out. But he is a captain here, so Mendoza might end up just as the 4th outfielder. And then, if an injury happens or something, Kempers will probably be the first guy to come up in the outfield. I'm also doing something to where Gallardo is going to split some time here. Every third game is Green at DH, just because we want to get Green in the lineup a decent amount here. I don't want him just sitting on the bench barely playing. I want to see what he can do for us. And then against lefties, since Gallardo is a lefty, we're going to have Green playing every second game at DH. So Gallardo, not totally full-time DH, but, still going to have a good amount of plate appearances to where if he, shows that he should be the guy at DH, he will end up being the full-time DH. But we'll see how things shake out. This is what the team looks like right now. Let's take a look at our preseason predictions real quick. The Toronto Blue Jays, rather, are projected to win 95 games, completely running away with the American League East Division. Over in the North, it's going to be the Tigers and Twins and the White Sox. Pretty not great division, But those are the top 3 teams in it. Then the Angels predicted to run away with the West Division, with us predicted to be in 4th place with 75 wins. And then over in the Central, the Astros, Rockies, and Royals all projected to have good seasons. Even the Rangers, not too shabby. No respect for any of our players, as you would expect. Even if we were a good team, none of our players ever end up on here. And then over in the National League side of things, the Pirates and the Mets on the top of the East, with the Nationals only 82 wins. In the North Division, the Cardinals projected to completely run away with that division. And then over in the West, it's going to be a tight race between all the 4 of these teams, with the Padres and Giants only at 83 and 82 wins. And then over in the South Division, you have the Rays projected to be the top of the standings there, with the Braves, Marlins, and Stars behind them. Now, one thing I do want to talk about here is the Washington Nationals have made some big changes this offseason, and a lot of players who were a part of the team here are no longer a part of it. I shouldn't say a lot, but there's definitely been some big changes with this Nationals team. First one that was a big one, Bobby Matamoros has been traded to the San Diego Padres. In the last year of his contract, they shipped him out of there. Now, they did actually pick up a really decent player for Matamoros, but Matamoros no longer a Washington National. As you can see here, if you go to his history page, they traded him along with $4.8 million in exchange for 4 players. These 2 guys in the back end are really just complete nothing throw-ins, but Chris Higbee here looks like he could actually be a really elite starting pitcher for them. If this guy develops and he turns out to be a really elite starter, that could be a huge swing for this Nationals team. And then, of course, I back out of that and it does this. And then I think the other guy was decent too, this Moreno guy. Yeah, Moreno, reliever, sure, could be a useful player for him. But Dax Hardcastle, no longer a National. He is signed with the New York Yankees this offseason through 2043. Decent contract. I might have thought about it, honestly, but he was a compensation guy, and I just did not want to give up a draft pick for him. So Dax Hardcastle is now a Yankee, no longer a National. Also, Luis Hernandez was a guy that I did think about offering, but I just didn't really think it was worth signing him and then pushing some other guys down the line in our depth chart. But he could have been a guy who fit in here with us with Salt Lake, but he ends up signing on a minor league deal. I did not realize that. But he signs with a minor league deal with the Orioles. Looks like he might end up on their team here, but he is now on the other team in the DMV area here with the Baltimore Orioles. Stays in the area, but no longer a Washington National. And then Evan Hollick as well, still rehabbing his torn UCL and is fragile. I haven't really looked at what his offer is now, 8.5. That might come down at some point. We might backtrack on this at some point. We might come back and look at this in 3 to 4 months and see what he's looking like, and maybe we give him a deal for the rest of the season and see what he could do for us here in Salt Lake City. And then this was the other big one. They traded Angel Feliz to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Completely fell off, I shouldn't say fell off a cliff, but had his worst offensive season for them in 2037. Still a really good defender here, but in the last year of his contract, they retained 30% of it and traded him to Pittsburgh. So Angel Feliz, no longer a National as well, and this team starting to look more and more like a CPU-run team and not a leftover of what we did there in the nation's capital. But honestly, we have $24 million, and this is after I've already cranked our dev budget to 55, our draft budget to 25. Our scouting is at $32 million. This is all locked right now. We've got a decent chunk of change here. Also, our attendance and whatnot is projected to shoot up this season, so that's good to see. And we have this $24 million just sitting here, so I might honestly just head into, what am I looking here for? Sign free agent. I might just go into here, and even with Evan Hollick with 3-4 months, I might just offer him a 1-year deal and just have him rehab with us, and maybe he comes back in time to either trade or help us down the line for a wildcard push, depending on what happens here. So I think we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll throw a scouting request on, because why not? And I'll offer him, like, I don't know, 7. Will he accept that? Boom. We'll give him $7 million to come here and rehab for us for a season. Absolutely. Maybe I could have thought about throwing out an option, but I'm too stupid to think of that in the moment, and I didn't do it. So instead, we just go 1 year for $7 million, and Evan Hollick might be a part of our bullpen here when he comes back from this UCL injury.